Hello and welcome to a new video on the 9-card spread or small tableau or 3x3 spread. This demonstration follows on from a 5-card string reading that I did many years ago but uploaded fairly recently. You can watch that, and if you haven't, it doesn't matter, but it does give you some context and maybe helps understand where this reading is going. The method is the main point of this video though. So we know it goes by several names. Don't worry about those names. It's the same spread. There's just different ways of doing this spread. Subtle difference, it's not major. And it's the kind of spread you want to use when you need some more information, a slightly more comprehensive look at an issue that goes beyond a 5-card or 3-card string reading. That's may not be able to give you all that information, and this helps with that. It's not as long or as detailed as a grand tableau, which covers a greater time period and several things that might be going on, but it does help you in learning to use a grand tableau because you use very similar techniques but on a larger scale. It's a good stepping stone. Before talking about the methods, there's just a few things I want to say in general about reading cards, and it's things that tend to bug traditionalists and those who've been doing this for several decades. There's some that seem quite obvious. So number one, when you ask the cards any question, if you're asking a specific question, it must be a question that can actually be answered. It sounds obvious, but it isn't always the case. It should be specific, not vague or woolly, unless it's a grand tableau spread that's intended to cover lots of issues or over a longer period. 3, it shouldn't be a question with an obvious answer either. You'd think that, wouldn't you? But I see that too often. And it shouldn't be a question that should be dealt with either by a doctor, a physician, that becomes a legal issue, a lawyer, a financial advisor, or even a psychiatrist, where medical intervention is essential. If you don't approach a reading with clear intentions, you won't get a clear answer. Decide beforehand how you'll read the spread, how you're going to shuffle the cards, and how you're going to deal the cards. Do that before. Do not make it up as you go along. I repeat, do not make it up as you go along. You must have intention. So why do I read the bits that I read in a 9-card spread and not some of the other bits that other Lenormand readers use? Well, I couldn't really decide until trying these other methods and actually going back to Anna.K's method, why I couldn't explain why I felt uncomfortable with them. But she's the same, and I'll quote her here. She said, "To further elaborate your readings, you blah 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 blah, you can include knighting, diagonals and mirroring. I don't feel comfortable with them because they make little intuitive sense to me from a visual standpoint." End quote. That's exactly how I feel. It's quite hard to articulate. She's done it really well. So you will see others that use knighting, diagonals and mirroring. Don't feel you have to do that. If it doesn't work for you, you don't have to do it. And actually, my experience, and it's shared by Andy Boroveshengra in his book on Lenormand, which you will see later, he's a little more conservative in the different ways of reading. And it applies to other forms of divination. There's always a risk that the more things you do, the more things you look at, you can just end up contradicting yourself. Also, to me, when readers do that, it looks a bit like they're hunting for clues because they're not that confident, if that makes sense. I've seen it with people I would describe as charlatans. They look for something to latch onto and then run with it, and it sounds impressive. A smart querent's going to see right through this trick. And the other thing is, people that say a lot of things in their reading, they do lots of interpretation. Now, by the law of averages, the more you say, the greater is the likelihood that you're going to hit on something significant or meaningful. And also, you can just end up saying so much that you say nothing. Experienced readers who've grown up in a cartomancy tradition are usually much more succinct and only give the necessary things, more direct. A thing to remember is that when Philippe Lenormand wrote the original instructions, there was only one spread, the Grand Tableau, and only one method really, which was near and far or distance. It was only later in the last century, the end of the last century, well, middle of the last century, that started to change. So for my example, I just use combinations within the rows and within the columns. That's enough for a 9-card spread, in my opinion. More directions and patterns just obscure the reading and they make it too cumbersome. That can happen in the Grand Tableau too, I would argue, and it just ends up taking ages to interpret, and it becomes a bit boring for everybody. So let's see the cards, and I'll talk through the various stages and meanings that are applicable to this particular reading. For this one, I selected the woman to be in the centre. She wasn't drawn at random. It's about her, and it's about this period when it happened. Not as things stand today. We're going back in time to what was happening then. And I'm not going to use her real name to protect her privacy, because, as I said in the previous video, there's always a chance she could stumble upon this or somebody knows her personally. So I want to protect that. If you're already fairly proficient reading Lenormand, just be careful to avoid some of the common meanings and preconceptions that you might have. It's because it's not how it seems at first for this one. So think about some of the lesser meanings or alternative meanings for some of these cards. You should do this anyway with any card reading anyway. I recently asked an online group about this reading, and I gave them some context. Only one person came close to actually understanding how this happened. Most of them were completely off, and I would argue it's because they stuck to set, rigid methods and meanings. They just didn't adapt it to the circumstance. But how could they, really? It's really very difficult to interpret a third-party reading. Well, I'm not blaming them for that at all. It's just quite hard. So the key point to remember when you're looking at this, to stop those preconceptions coming in, which I can see why people said these things, is that I was the one who ended the relationship, really. It wasn't her. Okay, so there's no specific question in this 9-card reading. The 5-card string dealt with specifics. This is more about going beyond those initial details and wanting more detail. So remember this as I go through the reading. Here we go. Okay, so let's look at how we read this small tableau. This is the method I use. It slightly differs from many that you'll find in other books. It's the method Anna.K uses. I started this way, started doing different methods, and I've come back to it because I think it works really well. It works well for me, and I think probably because Anna and I have quite similar backgrounds and a similar way of thinking and a similar philosophy about Lenormand and tarot, so we're kind of in tune, I think, and I should have realised that, and I should have just stuck to this way of doing things. It's just very easy and it makes sense to me. So let's use some cards just to separate things. First of all, we have this core card. This was pre-selected. In most readings you're going to have a man or a woman in the centre. I think it's probably exceptional not to. So it made sense to draw the woman card, the right woman card for this spread, put her in the middle and deal the other cards around that core card. And we can interpret her as a single card, one of the few occasions in Lenormand where we do want to some meanings around one card on its own. But the cards to either side, the anchor and the ship, are the modifiers. Okay, they modify the core, or they describe her. So that is our row 2 with her. Okay, and we read them as independent strings, and we read the cards either side in combination how they modify her. If you think of it as with reading Lenormand this way, is if you drop a pebble into a pond and the ripples go out and they're connected, they spread out from a core and they weaken as they get further away, but they're also linked in a circle. So that's how you can think of it. We read from the center outwards, not left to right as we would when we're reading. You can do that, of course, and you know, there's a good case for that, because that's how we read sentences in the Western world. But I think this one makes that central row. In this instance, we're looking at, she's got her back turned to the anchor, but she's facing the ship. Again, that informs the significator in this instance. So the things she's got her back to are the characteristics that she's maybe not heeded, or there's some kind of a warning, and the things she's facing are the characteristics that she is or was paying a lot of attention to, slightly stronger things. Well, now look at the bottom row. So this is the aspects of a person that they can control, or the things they can do. Again, we're not talking about subconscious, we're not talking about unconscious. These are things from modern psychological theory, modern models. So they're things that can be or have been controlled. The person is on top of them. And that top row, the things that the subject, the significator, cannot control. They're the things that are being done to them. They're things above, and they're impacting down upon them. Okay, that's quite a simple way of looking at it. We don't need any psychological modelling. It's how we see the pressure of problems pressing down upon us. And we may struggle with those things because they're higher up and out of reach. Okay, so that's how we interpret our rows, or how I interpret them. If we now look at the columns, so the first column, we could look at this as the past. Again, it's still a string. We're dealing with the central card and the cards around it. But in this case it's a vertical string, and it's a phase of time. It's the things behind her. Okay, and literally her back's turned to them. They're things that have happened. And the central column rather, is the present, and it's what they have, what's happening to them now, or in this case then. Okay, in that situation, looking back in time. And finally the right hand column are the things she's facing. We could see it as the things that the person wants, looking forward to. Okay, quite simple. So our columns are the time aspect of the past, turn the back to, current situation, and what they have now, and what they want in the future. So that's how I read a small tableau or 9-card spread. Continental Europe, you'll find that many German and Dutch and Belgian readers, they're quite blunt, quite direct, minimal use of explanation. They can see the cards, they make up a story quickly based on the words they've chosen that are appropriate to each card in that particular reading, and make up a story fairly quickly. And that's what I intend to do. So that's the method. The next bit looks at this particular reading. It started off incredibly complicated. Well, no, it didn't. It started off quite simply, but I add things as I go along, and then I come back and I look again at it. So I have, in this instance, the bits in red are some individual meanings, and the bits in green are some of the combinations. And we start building up a story, and there's some things that may be superfluous, and other bits that elaborate on it and help to explain. Of course, in this instance, I know some of the explanation. There's just still this slight mystery over the fox card. Okay, so the next part we'll talk about how this particular reading pans out. It's probably easier, especially when you're starting out, to look at the individual meanings for each card. So I'll give you those in sequence of card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm looking at an individual, or a word, or a couple of words, or a sentence which is appropriate to this reading. Now, the reading for this, and if you've watched the previous video, you'll have some background on this, but basically it was a whirlwind romance in Venice many years ago, which I have regrets that it ended for many reasons that I won't go into again. And basically I was the one who stepped away. Now, people, as I said in the introduction, people who'd seen this and had a little bit of background assumed all sorts of things which were actually very inaccurate. But yes, I was the one that turned away. So I'm looking for, I know a little bit about this, but I'm looking for the words that help to describe this in standard meanings or newer meanings for the cards. So key, I interpreted here as a meeting or a solution. Lily as a healthy relationship. Tower, about isolation. An anchor, about a love bond or a solid relationship. The woman, a refined and receptive woman. A ship is about new encounters or continuing perhaps a long distance relationship. Snake, about vigilance and domination. Now, without going into detail, one thing that came before this romance was that she had been quite a serious attack from a stranger. The next one is Clover. So this is about a promising encounter or staying available. The flowers are available. And the fox is about a non-lasting relationship. So they could be individual meanings. How they make sense for this reading is a little bit more problematic, and it becomes complicated, and I had to revisit and start working out how these combinations worked. So the interpretation for this, let's look at this woman and how she's affected by the cards either side. So I read it as you stopped and held back, maybe a little bit stuck with this anchor. The anchor also is in a wetlands, which I found quite applicable to Venice. I think that's incidental, but anyway. And I moved on, continued travelling. So, it was affected by the fact that there was travelling and ready to leave, and this continuation didn't happen here. The things that she had controlled was we worked through together to overcome what had happened in this trauma. You could also say it's about not taking risks, following an inner calling. We'd helped to overcome this, the pair of us. But we've also got this fox, which is a little bit about suspicion and not quite sure of whether to continue and so on. And the things that we're not able to control is about being, we could see this as being open to this sensual pleasure, perhaps sexual pleasure, and about dropping the barriers for a more intense understanding. But also about denying oneself and being reclusive, and moral boundaries and dignity and pride, this isolation in the tower. And these things are not quite in control. We control some of these bad negative effects, but these things are a little bit hard to work out. So the thing she's turned her back on here, if we read this anchor, key and snake, it's about perhaps being allowed someone to hold on to us or confine us, and about breaking free from this being tied down, a liberation, if you like. It could also be about leading to a new venture, but wanting safety and stability. Maybe there's power and sex linked into this. So here we have in this present part, we have this sensuality of not quite knowing how far this will proceed, but having the good fortune to meet somebody who's helped to make light of things and help to overcome this trauma. But looking to the future, unfortunately, there's this difficulty with isolation and the barriers, but also this moving on, which is what I did, of moving ahead and leaving this fox, who perhaps could be me and my betrayal, if you like, or because of this indecision. Okay, so we've looked at the rows and the columns there, and you start to build up a picture. You've gone from individual meanings to combinations to making strings from the rows and the columns, and then you can kind of put that together, and hopefully you have an overarching story. So we don't need any of these diagonals and knights and things like that, because we'll start to either just repeat ourselves or just gibber on, or possibly even contradict. We have enough material there, I think. So my summary is that basically she faces the lily above her and was wanting a physical relationship and someone to travel with who makes her feel safe and secure, and hopes to go away together with me, whilst at the same time turning her back, and the healing from the snake and the assault. But she's not in complete control of her feelings, understandably, if you knew the circumstances. But she's feeling lucky, or she felt lucky, because this is in the past, of course, the Clover, to have found someone who helps her to overcome the recent trauma over the snake. And her good luck was tempered by the fox and snake experiences. The opportunities to have a more perhaps sexual encounter was perhaps hindered by being in a hostel, again with the tower. So that's the overall story. There is one, I think, slightly grey area, which is the fox, and that's a card which I think might refer to me, and it's the one card which is a little bit harder to interpret in terms of the whole picture there, but I think there is enough there to a fairly comprehensive analysis of those few days in Venice in the late 1980s. For me, this was an extraordinarily accurate 9-card spread, and it worked by using that method. So, as I say, there are other people that repeat the ways of doing the 9-card spread, and it's almost become the orthodoxy, and I don't really know why, because you might want to try these other alternatives. You might base your readings on different models. You might want a more psychological or psychoanalytical model, or Jungian. that's entirely up to you. And you know, some fantastic readers do use those methods very successfully. But I'm of the school of less is often better, and be direct. We're not dealing with tarot and deep symbolism and the importance and critical nature of spreads and positions. Lenormand is meant to be simple and direct. It's about an image triggers a word or a sentence, and you make up a story by combining those together. The Lenormand, they're not cards, it's a system, and I think that hopefully explains it as clearly as possible. Before I wrap this up, there's another aspect of Lenormand cards you can use, which is to describe people. I'm normally a little bit reluctant to use cards for physical descriptions of people, but it's fun to do, and in this particular reading it's very apt. Now there aren't many writers that go into this in any detail. The only one I know is Andy Boroveshengra in this wonderful book, and in one of his appendixes he's got a section on using cards to describe people, and it's to describe either their physical characteristics or something about their lifestyle or their personality. And it's quite interesting to do that with these cards, because it really works. It doesn't always, obviously, but it does on this one. So I'll remove the cards that we don't need for this, because they actually go around the significator, the woman here, so we don't need these outer cards. So we just want the cards that are above and alongside. And also, to just give you a little contrast, I'm going to take away the Anna.K cards and show you in this case the Piatnik more traditional designed deck, just to give you a different look at the layout. It's quite a nice, clear, traditional deck. So same cards, same meanings, different cards. It also demonstrates how the meanings for Lenormand are pretty universal. It doesn't really matter which cards you use, they're fairly universal. So out of fun, let's see what this describes. According to Andy's description, now, well, let's start here with the anchor, and he refers to the anchor card as somebody who lives or is from the coast or has maritime or navy connections. Well, in this case, the person I'm talking about did live in a coastal town, so that one's quite appropriate. Clover, this describes somebody who is affectionate and personable. Well, she was both of those things. I definitely agree with that one. And the lily at the top, this is a really nice card, very appropriate. It describes someone young. Well, she was 19, fair-haired. Yes, she was blonde, sexy and attractive, and well-formed. Well, she was all of those things as well. And then we have the ship. This is the only one that it's not clear that this one fits. I think we have to do a little bit of interpretation here. It's usually somebody who's an entrepreneur, or perhaps a sales rep, or a dreamer, or an idealist. Well, I'm not sure she was any of those things, but she was a student. So I suppose a student in a way could be somebody who's idealistic and searching for things. So in that instance, that one probably works. So anyway, I thought I'd just show you that, because I think it is actually quite interesting to look at people and cards. It doesn't always work, but it did in this instance. Right, well, I hope that helped. Just one thing before I go is the usual thing is, please remember to like this video if you did, and subscribe if you want to see more, and comment if you have any other thoughts about this reading or about the method I used, or you want to ask any more questions. It's quite fun to do anyway, and eventually the next video, I'm not sure when it will happen, will be on the grand tableau and how I do that again, which is quite pared down, I suppose. But anyway, thanks for watching and take care. Goodbye.